My name is Marco, and my job is writing tourist guides. It's a job that I like. I like discovering new places, getting to know their colors, their tastes, the people who live there. I like setting off, and today I'm setting off for the Abruzzi to the province of Chieti and the area between the Trinio and Sinello rivers. I have to write a guide to the city of Vasto. I've never been, which is why I can't wait to get there. And here I am in the historic center that dominates the Gulf of Vasto, also known as the Golden Gulf. Vasto today has about 40,000 inhabitants and rises on a hill 144 meters above sea level. But according to legend, it was Diomedes, returning from the Trojan War, who founded the city, probably on the plain of Punta Penna, not far from here. That was the site of the Frentani city of Histonium, which in 89 BC the Romans moved to its present location. Conquered first by the Lombards and then by the Franks, it lost its original name, becoming Vasto da Amore. The church of this medieval village was St. Mary Major. Dominated on the outside by the bell tower, partly rebuilt in 1715, inside it houses the tombs of noble families, especially that of the Davalos, who from 1496, for a full 3 centuries, were the lords of Vasto. And the reliquary of the Sacred Thorn, donated by Pius IV to Ferrante Francesco Davalos halfway through the 16th century. In 1645, a Turkish slave saved it from a fire, obtaining in exchange his freedom and popular acclaim. Continuing my wandering, I reached the Bassano Tower. It is one of the few left of the old medieval city wall. The tower bounds on one side Piazza Rossetti, the city's principal square, dedicated to Vasto's Risorgimento poet Gabriele Rossetti. Having moved to London, Gabriele Rossetti had 4 children who followed in his footsteps in literature. In particular, Dante Gabriele Rossetti became a well-known English poet, but also an important painter, one of the founders of the pre-Raphaelite movement. Crossing the square, I find myself in front of the imposing medieval fortress, altered halfway through the 15th century by a powerful mercenary commander, Giacomo Caldora, who gave his name to the fortress, Castello Caldoresco. And it was Caldora again who built the palace that would become the residence of the Davalos. Of Caldora's time, there are traces both inside and outside, even though the 16th century stamp left by the powerful Spanish family is the more evident today. And inside the Davalos Palace, in the Neapolitan garden, that I meet Daniela. It is she who tells me something of the history of the palace.
Questo è il giardino napoletano di Palazzo Davalos, è molto interessante, pieno di piante che ricordano proprio il clima mediterraneo, quindi le aranci, i nespoli, dei bellissimi fiori, naturalmente i gerani, abbiamo anche piante di rosmarino. Palazzo Davalos è un palazzo che possiamo dire incapsulato perché ha delle pareti inserite all'interno di epoca successiva rispetto alla fondazione. Ha subito gli attacchi dei Saraceni ed è soprattutto la sede dei musei civici di Vasto. Dentro al piano terra si può visitare il museo archeologico, quindi con importanti testimonianze preromane e romane. Al piano superiore ci sono invece le vere e proprie pinacoteche, quindi quadri dell'Ottocento, ma anche collezioni di arte contemporanea.
The picture gallery is home to the works of some of Vasto's most important artists. Above all, the Palizzi brothers, in particular Giuseppe and Filippo, the first to give a verist direction to Italian painting of the 1800s. And alongside these works in the Gallery of Modern Art, the works of 20th century artists donated to the city by the Paglioni family. Inside the palace, I also find the Costume Museum. In these rooms, faced by these clothes, I really feel as though I were in another era. I leave the Davalos Palace and return to the present, to my trip through the city's historic center. A few steps and I find myself in front of St. Joseph's, at one time the church of the medieval convent of the Augustinians, and since 1853 the Cathedral of Vasto. The interior was redone in Gothic style between the end of the 19th century and the start of the 20th, and it contains a wooden triptych painted in 1505 by Michele Greco d'Avallona. Another interesting church is the 18th century Madonna del Carmine, decorated with stucco work and paintings from that area, including the Ecstasy of St. Teresa d'Avila by the Neapolitan Fedele Fischetti right above the main altar. or again that of the Archangel Michael, a small church born in 1600 from a vow of the people of Vasto, in recognition of the benevolent intercession that made them immune to the plague. The church was built on one of the highest points of the city from which it is possible to admire the splendid panorama of the Gulf, with a facade facing in the direction of the sanctuary of the Archangel Michael on the Gargano, and Michael is also the patron of Vasto. Leaving the church, I find myself immediately on the long tree-lined avenue of the city villa. While in the villa dedicated to Francesco Romani on the other side of the historic center, I find the monument to the immigrant, in memory of all those people of the Abruzzi who left this land and went to seek a better life elsewhere. I think it must be lovely for those who are able to come back to find the places of their memory intact and perfectly conserved. For this reason, too, apart from its beauty, it is important that places like the Teatro Rossetti still exist. I have the good luck to get inside this 19th century jewel, to see its stucco work and vault from close up. A jewel like Giuseppe's Dolceria Tipica, which I find by following the smell. Born 100 years ago as a baker's, today it deals with the production of homemade sweets.
Visto che sei dalle nostre parti, io non posso non consigliarti i dolci più tipici di questo territorio. Partirei dai bocconotti passando per le catarrette, la cicerchiata, i celli pieni, i mostaccioli, i cagionetti con i ceci, le scrippelle, il fiadone di ricotta e per ultimo la pizza dolce.
I am also curious about the celli ripieni, and I have Giuseppe explain how he makes them.
I celli pieni sono fatti con l'impasto esterno, è un impasto molto tenero fatto con vino bianco e olio d'oliva e zucchero, chiaramente, e farina. Mentre invece il ripieno è fatto con una marmellata che si usa molto dalle nostre parti, cioè la marmellata d'uva, che contiene ancora anche le bucce, quindi ha un nome molto particolare, si chiama scrucchiata, proprio perché quando la mangi lascia ancora quel rumore della buccia dell'uva, e mischiata a del cacao, delle mandorle tritate e dei biscotti triturati.
And here are the finished sweets. I don't need to say how good they are, you just have to look at them. Having left Giuseppe's shop, I arrive at the Ambling Lodge, from the name of Austrian noble who came here in the suite of the Davalos family. From here you can enjoy the most beautiful view of the city, and on particularly clear days, it is possible to see the Tremiti Islands and the Gargano promontory. Further on, I discover the Panzotto portal, and going past the Davalos Palace, I reach Via Adriatica, where I find the remains of St. Peter's Church, destroyed in the landslide that struck the city in 1956. St. Peter's, born from a 1st century AD temple, was an important place of worship in the early Middle Ages. Below Via Adriatica, the archaeological walk unfolds in parallel, where I am able to admire the remains of the Roman and medieval city. And at the end of the walk, the archaeological park of the Roman Baths, and its magnificent mosaics that represent real and imaginary marine animals and the triumph of Neptune, surrounded by tritons and nereids, riding dragons and seahorses. Here the sea, the real sea, not the fantasy one of these mosaics, is really very close. At Vasto Marina, I am accompanied by Michael and Serena, 2 young people who offer to act as my guides. Together, following the cycle path, we go first to the least polluted and wildest part of the coast, that of the dunes. And then they take me to the magnificent beaches that form the heart of the Golden Gulf, beaches formed from incredibly fine and golden sand. They have the good fortune to live a few feet from the sea, so, work permitting, whenever they can, they come here to sunbathe and swim, mixing in with the tourists who come from all over the world to relax or have fun, drawn by the perfect welcome, the facilities and the clear waters these beaches have to offer. And there is also fun to be had in the evening in the streets of the historic center, where you can choose from among the many initiatives the city has to offer. Or else go down to Vasto Marina for a walk along the promenade, or to spend the night in one of the many clubs that are open until dawn. And this welcome also means comfortable hotels and excellent restaurants. And I choose Italo's restaurant, a cook for passion, at one time an equally passionate footballer. We start with the scapece, a simple and tasty dish. You flour the skate and fry it in the boiling oil. Then you boil some vinegar in which you melt the saffron, and when the skate cools down, you stick it into this mix.
Questo è un piatto che viene lasciato a lunga conservazione, specialmente nei periodi invernali, dove una volta per le mareggiate, i cattivi tempi che ci stavano, le barche di quell'epoca non potevano uscire.
For the first course, Italo decides on cavatelli alla pescatrice. Pescatrice is anglerfish, the main ingredient of the sauce, along with garlic, parsley, and tomato. And to enrich this sauce, Italo also adds some squill. He cooks the cavatelli, a pasta made with water and flour and scooped out by hand, and mixes it with the sauce. And seeing it, it looks wonderful.
Il cavatello alla pescatrice non è buono, è buonissimo.
And finally, we get to the main course, the most sought after, the famous Vastese fish soup. Italo explains to me that in this dish, the marine tradition and that of the countryside get mixed up, bringing together the produce of the sea and the field. The basis of the dish is composed of extra virgin olive oil, garlic, fresh cherry tomatoes, green pepper, and parsley. To this is added at least 6 or 7 different sorts of fish that vary depending on the season, along with shellfish. The fish most commonly used are gurnard, weaver, rockfish, anglerfish, mullet, and cod, cuttlefish, and squid. First, the ones with the toughest meat are placed in the sauce until finally arriving, as the cooking continues, at the most tender fish like the mullet and cod. The fish soup is really good, and Italo's restaurant is really welcoming, great after a long day spent at the sea, perhaps. Italo uses only extra virgin olive oil that is produced locally, near the sea and its breezes, on this sun-kissed hills. An oil that is delicate, green, and almondy, like the one Giovanni and his father offer me. They explained to me that this DOP oil, known as Colline Teatine, is obtained from different varieties of olive, including the native variety Nebbio, or fog, that gets its name from the pale green color of its foliage that seems to be permanently wrapped in fog. And it is here, on these hills that descend gradually and sweetly towards the coast, that Sergio has his wine business.
Noi produciamo vino bianco delle tipologie Trebbiano, Pecorino, Cococciola, e per quanto riguarda invece i rosati facciamo il rosato IGT e il Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo DOP. Invece per i rossi facciamo un buon Montepulciano,
Which, if it is a reserve, has to be aged for at least 2 years, at least 9 months of which in wooden casks. This is to heighten its characteristic hints of licorice, spices, and red fruits. The secret of a good wine is selecting the best bunches of grapes in the vineyard and make them into wine not far from the harvest.
alla fine arriveremo a selezionare il miglior vino da mettere in bottiglia, sempre a livello artigianale.
And when I taste them, I cannot but agree. And with the Montepulciano, I also taste Ventricina, a salami made inland with the most noble and lean parts of the pig, minced sweet pepper and wild fennel. Around here, this is the queen of the salami. From Vasto Marina, following the line of the old railway, I head north along 18 kilometers of incredibly varied coastline, made up of sandy and rocky beaches, bays, and dunes. Like Trave, Concarella, Casarsa, San Nicola, Canale, Vignola. And the Trabocchi, stretched out on the rocks like some monster ready to spring on its prey, the trabocco, with its numerous machines, had a formidable aspect. In the entanglement of the beams and ropes, one could distinguish the fishermen stooping towards the waters, steady, motionless, like bronzes, and over their tragic lives hung the mortal spell. This is how D'Annunzio in The Triumph of Death describes the trabocchi, these strange devices that challenge the violence of the storm, slipping into the sea and allowing drying fishing, dropping and raising a large squared net with ropes and pulleys. But here they also fish in small boats, like they did once, and men like Ettore, who goes to sea every day, still do.
Stamattina siamo usciti alle 5. Ci siamo avviati per andare a prendere le reti che avevamo posizionato a circa 3 miglia dalla costa. La pesca era stata improntata per prendere le razze. Purtroppo di razze ne abbiamo prese pochissime, forse 5 o 6 nella rete. Nel cammino abbiamo incontrato anche un vento da scirocco che si è messo forte e quindi ci ha creato problemi nel salpare le reti. Comunque alla fine, come vedete, ce l'abbiamo fatta.
But other times the sea is generous, and it leaves you a good story to tell.
Una mattina vado a salpare le reti, come abbiamo fatto oggi, e in mezzo trovo questa tartaruga gigantesca, davvero gigantesca, io non ce l'ho fatta issarla a bordo, ma era morta e con mio grande rammarico ho voluto lo stesso issarla a bordo per portarla poi nel centro specializzato e farla catalogare. È una tartaruga della specie carretta che veniva dalla Tunisia, ma quando l'ho issata a bordo, dopo un po', è sembrato un miracolo, la tartaruga ha ripreso a respirare. Ho avvisato la capitaneria di porto, l'abbiamo portata a terra, loro l'hanno portata nel centro specializzato e dopo 2 mesi è stata rimessa in mare e l'hanno ribattezzata la tartaruga Ettore, che adesso chissà dove sarà, in quali oceani o in quali mari sperduti a passare le sue giornate.
A lovely story with a happy ending. And Ettore's story accompanies me to Punta Penna, where the Frentani town of Histonium once stood, and where, around 1200, Frederick II had the port city of Pennaluce built. As if there were a curse, Pennaluce was abandoned as well, leaving as the only sign of its existence the little church of the Madonna di Pennaluce, restored in the 19th century. And beside the church, the Punta Penna lighthouse, the tallest in the whole of the Adriatic. But the natural jewel in this area is the important regional natural reserve of Punta d'Erci, established in 1998, that includes the really beautiful beach of Punta Penna, with its dunes intact, the evocative promontory of Punta d'Erci, and the isolated pebbly beach at Motta Grossa. A very special sort of vegetation grows among these dunes, and various species of bird nest here.
La fauna è soprattutto quella ornitica, gli uccelli di passo in primavera e in autunno, si possono vedere cose interessanti, da rapaci, a limicoli, a trampolieri. Per quanto riguarda la flora c'è soprattutto un ambiente dunale integro, in notevole accrescimento, con tutta la varia successione vegetazionale tipica di una spiaggia dunale ancora integra.
This is Stefano from the Regional Natural Park of Punta d'Erci, a park that has a bird as its symbol, the Kentish plover.
Il fratino è il simbolo della riserva, è un uccello strettamente legato all'ambiente dunale e quindi è anche un preziosissimo indicatore biologico dello stato di salute dell'ambiente dunale. Dove il fratino nidifica vuol dire che le dune ci sono ancora, vuol dire che il mare non mangia la costa, vuol dire alla fine, in definitiva, che si possono ancora fare degli ottimi bagni.
And he also explains to me why the dunes are so important.
Ma le dune sono importanti perché dal punto di vista vegetazionale sono un vero e proprio deserto che vive, mentre l'albero è una bellissima presenza statica, le dune devono muoversi in continuazione come degli esseri camminanti e pensanti quasi, per poter vincere un ambiente estremamente duro a livello di temperatura, a livello di calpestio delle persone, quando questo si verifica, a livello di vento che viene dal mare e che molte volte porta gli inquinanti. Sono piante che hanno sviluppato delle caratteristiche molto molto particolari che li rendono molto interessanti e in primavera hanno delle fioriture bellissime e veramente inaspettate per un posto di mare.
And apart from short excursions or bird watching in search of the Kentish plover, the reserve has other activities to take part in, such as surfing, mountain biking, or canoeing. I tasted wonderful dishes and met people with stories to tell. I found peace for myself in my eyes. I saw beautiful sights and discovered places to have fun or simply relax. I will write all this in the guide, but above all, I will write that whoever comes to Vasto cannot but feel love at first visit.